Good day, family. I was doing some research. I almost forgot to come back over here. Because some stuff happening with the earth. Some like protonic thinning. I think that's what they call it. Protonic thinning. And I was trying to see what's going on. But it stretches like from Michigan to Nebraska. And it's thinning out under the earth. It's like a subterranean, the crust is dripping or something like that. It's falling in, so to speak. I don't know. I got to do some more research on this stuff. But that's what I was looking at and stuff. So I can see what's happening here. And see what Brother BD got to say about this right here. Because, I told y'all some things is happening. We're in a new era. Mother Earth is waking up. She's shifting. She's activating. And cosmic energy is too. Good day, Larry. It's good to see you. It's so good to see you in Eclipse Apple. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to get right to reading. Tonight. It was something else I had looked up also. But just beginning, just so I can know what's going on with that and stuff. It was about the interstellar objects that's coming into the atmosphere and stuff. Well, not into this atmosphere, but they're coming damn close to this atmosphere. It was one. It's been like 3 of them. One of them was a moo. I think I'm saying it right. A moo, something like that right there. And it was in 2017. Then you had Borisov. That was an interstellar object, but it was more like a comet. I think it was a comet. I just read about it, and I was trying to look up some other stuff, and I saw those right there. And I mentioned a moo once before because it was just tumbling, but it went on. They said it'll never be back. We don't know. It might make a U-turn and come back. I have no idea. But the other one in 2019 was Borisov. Now this one here, this new interstellar object that I was looking at when I was staring at the screen and stuff, it's called Borisov. It's got another scientific name, A1 or some shit like that. I'll find it and write it down. And but that was found in 2019. And so none of them are really close to Earth. They making drive-bys. They passing by Earth. They not, this gravitational pull ain't pulling them to Earth and stuff. So just keep your eyes on the sky. And you can see, this third one here. There was a moo in 2017, then Borisov in 2019. Now the one that they found July the 1st, 2025 is called 3I/Axis. And it's got another scientific name and stuff too, but you can easily look it up because it's 3I for interstellar unknown object or something like that. What was it? Oh, the third interstellar object. That's why they call it 3I. It's the third interstellar object because it ain't been no more except for these 3. Look for more. But you can see it with a telescope right now. If you look it up, the positioning of it in the skies and stuff, you can see it. It's visible with a telescope. And it'll be visible to September. And then it'll be visible again around December. After it come behind the sun or something like that and stuff. But yeah, I'm just looking at it and stuff, fascinated. This time right here, y'all, this is the perfect time for us awakening, standing on our own, standing up for us and our ancestors. We ain't alone. Don't feel like you're alone. No, don't feel like you're alone, honey. The ancestors is right there with you. Oh, do you know today? Me and the sister were thanking each other. I think she thanked me first, and I thanked her back. And then I mentioned, because, the Jesus thing. It was about Jesus. It took me back because it was right to my face. And I was like, my ancestors, they they favor me. I don't like to say bless. You know, my ancestors take good care of me. They take care of me. I just ask them what I want. You got any prayer or anything for me? Give it to my ancestors and stuff. And she told me she don't believe in the ancestors. Sure did, honey. I don't think we'll ever have a conversation again. But yeah, I was just like, wow, okay. Stand on your truth if that's what it is. But for me, it's all my ancestors. It's all about my ancestors. Yeah, sure did. But just know whose side you're on. Go within and know where you don't to flat out deny the ancestors. But I digress, you know. I just want y'all to know. Don't reject and neglect our ancestors. Stop denying them, ignoring them. You know, I don't know if it's because other people was around, you know. I guess we were mainly the main blacks there. Black women and stuff that were there. I don't know what prompted it and stuff to say it like that. But that was the wrong thing to say. Watch your mouth. Watch your words. Yeah, it does have power to words. And you better stop using them against the ancestors and their business. This right here is our ancestors' business. So this is our business. And you better stop being against it. Black America, I'm just saying, in my opinion, the time is now to decide where you stand on the side of truth, or on the side of lies, murder, mayhem, and maiming of humanity, of the animal kingdom, of planet Earth, and of the cosmic, the ethers. Because white folks maiming that out there too. Every time they shoot something far out into the ethers, trying to look for something, they maiming it. You ain't supposed to be all out there probing into life. Oh, y'all know Detroit got the first robot? Little bitty old thing said it can't hurt a dog. Honey, yeah, Detroit got the... Let me see if I can go to it real fast. I ain't did this in a while. Yep. Racism and Trauma by Martha Mason Juice. I'm going to write that down too. Let me write it down now so I don't forget. Racism and Trauma. We do got a lot of it. I'm going to look for it tomorrow. Thank you so much. I'm going to look for this tomorrow. And after White Fragility, we might go ahead and read it. Since it ain't going to be mine, I'll have to take it back unless I find it. Yeah, I'm going to put that in our books to buy notebook. Thank you so much, Eclipse. But y'all want y'all to see this video. Should we eat burgers tomorrow? Ask Marta. I guess so. No insurance, $42 check, huh? I don't know. I don't eat burgers anymore. I try not to. I started to today to have me a burger, but then I thought, nah. Yeah, this robot. They hear it starts off innocent. Black America. It starts off very innocent. But after it's said and done, oh man, I can't even find it. I thought it would be in my shorts, but it's not. Let me put it in. And then brother also was saying that he's going to have the first robot fighting competitions. Robots, they huge too, but they're going to be fighting in Detroit, like a big old huge cage, like they used to have the cage fights and stuff with Kimbo and them. I guess I don't know who the hell was in the cage fights and stuff, but you get my drift. Well, that's what the robots fighting each other. And this right here is just to suck you in, make you think it's innocent, and then before you know it, hell, they're gonna be finna fight your ass. Your ass or no, you don't stand a chance against that robot. It starts off easy like this, and he's a brother. Yeah, I'm just saying. Us. We don't ever think about the consequences and what it could mean for us. We don't. We go right along with the program, with the narrative. We got some brilliant ideas too. But them brilliant ideas, are they benefits? Them brilliant ideas, is it going to benefit us? What we're learning in Powernomics, the group collective, us, Black America, we got to decide if we're going to be a part of that bullshit. I'm tired. Yeah, don't be mad at me, Mr. Sir. But I'm just saying, my people don't need to be up in there watching no motherfucking robots fighting each other. We don't. If I had my way and had the power that white America got, I wouldn't even want it in our community. Why not put that shit in white folks' community? Why put it in our community? That ain't got no. We trying to build this. We trying to build this right here up. We're not trying to be further divided between us and what we need to do. I'm just saying, sir. I don't want to look up in your robot, be outside. I don't want to see your robot. People walking up, shaking the robot hand, talking to it, taking pictures. Damn near want an autograph from the robot. It's gullible. We all been gullible. We all been there before. Luther Vandross had a song, I Don't Want to Be a Fool No More. Beautiful song. We all been there and done that. But this is allegedly 2025. Black America, your ass should know better. You should know by now. No, I'm not finna jump on that bandwagon with that right there. No, Black Collective, we finna go on and do us right here. We don't need to go from a regular dog, a real dog, to the robot dog. We don't need to go from the mannequin in the store. That's as far as they need to motherfucking go. You don't need to have the mannequin turn to a live-like operating machine in your house, in your bed, driving your car. All of that, we don't need it. We don't need it. That's how we get sucked into all of these trends that white America come up with. Because don't nobody want to say, hey, we don't want to be part of that bullshit. Put that shit over there with white folks. They ass is the one want to see somebody fight against each other. Put that shit over there with white folks. Yeah, it's fucked up, you ask me. But I digress, Here it is right here. Yeah, let me see now. How did I used to do it? Because, you have to share. Okay, let me go back to this. Oh, okay, there it is right there. Okay, so this is the robot walking down Michigan Street. Ooh, wait. Okay, here it is. And then we go back to this. Yeah, I don't like technology, honey. So, no. Wait a minute. I ain't even got no sound on it, do it. Oh, I didn't get that far, but I started looking. Look at it. The motherfucker running, ain't it? Oh, yeah, this right here just to throw you off. They got some robots, motherfucker gonna be rolling after your ass. It look like he gonna be taking steps, but he gonna have wheels up under. It's gonna be rolling right up alongside your ass. You're gonna have to stop. You're gonna be like, damn, it's your new world. Yep. That's it. It's only a matter of time.
Man, that's sweet, bro. I need one of that. That's
Now they operating it with a remote. He's the gentleman that I seen is actually teaching young the youth and stuff, teenagers how to operate the robots and stuff. And that's a good thing. I mean, since you got them out here, teach our babies, give them a chance with it. You got it out here.
Yes.
Nobody got nothing to say. Yeah, I guess I've been by myself. Mhm. Loud ass. Yeah, it starts off like this. That's how it starts off, y'all. Where they make it seem like it's real innocent and it's harmful, it's harmless. It ain't gonna hurt you. It ain't got no ultra motives. Hell, it's about recording your ass right there. I ain't said a word to you, but it's about recording everything right then and there. That's just the beginning. Now the robots that brother got fighting each other, they huge. They look like Terminators. Them was some huge. I didn't finish watching all that and that one either. But I just seen it. I just thought you should know in case you didn't know. Because I didn't know it was this close. But yeah, it's like right upon us. Hell, it's here. And you go to Detroit right now. You go outside on Michigan Street. Hopefully they got his little ass put up somewhere. I mean, he damn sure can take care of himself, I'm sure. But you hit it or anything, you're about to go to jail. Because it's gonna be like a protected new thing. Yeah, like you get insurance on other stuff. Well, that's the insurance for that little thing right there. Yeah, life wasn't supposed to be about all of this, but I digress. Hey there, how you doing, Hank? Good day. Yeah, mm, did any of you shoot ski? What's that? Ski? I don't know nothing about that. My cousin name was Ski. Yeah, Ski. That's what we call him for short. Skeeter. Ski. But other than that, I don't know. Yeah, let's read because that's enough. Yeah, for me to do some more research on the robots and the interstellar objects. Just know there's something coming. Might be a meteor, might be a missile. I don't know. Just keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes on the prize. Everybody else is. Prepare your garden. Get your books up together. Get your necessities you're gonna need. Maybe we'll talk about that some tomorrow. You know, because I have been trying to build up my little uh, pantry, preparing and stuff. You know, and for what little bit it's gonna do and stuff. I gotta try something. Gotta have something for a few days, a few weeks, or whatever. You know, just don't be caught without anything. Copyright disclaimer under 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news report, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Yeah, when you learn something, you be fast with it, don't you? Yeah, well, wait till I really feel like I know it. And I'm be sitting up here with my eyes closed, saying the damn copyright disclaimer. Some of my face, you know, they erased the copyright disclaimer too. Oh, wait till them motherfuckers start erasing your music. Oh, Black America. Mm, honey. Yes, take everything. Shit, don't think they won't. But yes, we are reading White Fragility. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism by Robin DiAngelo. And the foreword is by Michael Eric Dyson. We just finished his book, Tears We Cannot Stop. And it's a message, a sermon to white America. So, you know, this was kind of like right on time because it took me a day or two to decide, well, what I'm going to read next. But then I had this. So, yeah. And we're on chapter 2. With the ancestors, I think we can do chapter 2 and chapter 3. I think I could do 2 chapters now. Yeah. I got a whole jug of spring water right here. Yeah, I got the fan and the air on. I think I can do 2 chapters, y'all. Thank you. Let's get started. Racism and white supremacy. Many of us have been taught to believe that there are distinct biological and genetic differences between races. This biology accounts for visual differences such as skin color, hair texture, and eye shape, and traits that we believe we see, such as sexuality, athleticism, or mathematical ability. The idea of race as a biological construct makes it easy to believe that many of the divisions we see in society are natural. But race, like gender, is socially constructed. The differences we see with our eyes, differences such as hair texture and eye color, are superficial and emerged as adaptations to geography. Under the skin, there is no true biological race. The external characteristics that we use to define race are unreliable indicators of genetic variation between any two people. However, the belief that race and the differences associated with it are biological is deep seated. To challenge the belief in race as biology, we need to understand the social and economic investments that drove science to organize society and its resources along racial lines, and why this organization is so enduring. Social construction of race in the United States. Freedom and equality, regardless of religion or class status, were radical new ideas when the United States was formed. At the same time, the U.S. economy was based on the abduction and enslavement of African people, the displacement and genocide of indigenous people, and the annexation of Mexican lands. Furthermore, or further, the colonizers who came were not free of their own cultural conditioning. They brought with them deeply internalized patterns of domination and submission. The tension between the noble ideology of equality and the cruel reality of genocide, enslavement, and colonization had to be reconciled. Thomas Jefferson, who himself owned hundreds of enslaved people, and others, they turned to science. Jefferson suggested that there were natural differences between the races and asked scientists to find them. If science could prove that Black people were naturally and inherently inferior, he saw indigenous people as culturally deficient or shortcoming that could be remedied. There would be no contradiction between our professed ideas and our actual practices. There were, of course, enormous economic interests in justifying enslavement and colonization. Race science was driven by these social and economic interests, which came to establish cultural norms and legal rulings that legitimized racism and the privileged status of those defined as white people. Drawing on the work of Europeans before them, American scientists began searching for the answer to the perceived inferiority of non Anglo groups. Illustrating the power of our questions to shape the knowledge we validate, these scientists didn't ask, are Blacks and others inferior, or are Blacks and others is in parentheses? They didn't ask, are Blacks inferior? They asked, why are Blacks and others inferior? In less than a century, Jefferson's suggestion to racial difference became commonly accepted as scientific fact. The idea of racial inferiority was created to justify unequal treatment. Belief in racial inferiority is not what triggered unequal treatment, nor was fear of indifference. As Ta-Nehisi Coates states, but race is the child of racism, not the father. He means that first we exploited people for their resources, not according to how they looked. Exploitation came first, and then the ideology of unequal races to justify this exploitation followed. Similarly, historian Ibram Kendi, in his National Book Award winning work, Stamped from the Beginning. I was looking for that book the other night. We have that book. It is a huge book. It is so beautiful. Where is that? Right here. Oh, my ancestors. I knew when I saw his name, Ibram X. Kendi. Kendi. We have his book. We're gonna read it when we get to it. It's probably gonna take me 3 months. I'm just joking, y'all. It ain't gonna take me 3 months to read. Hopefully by then I won't have nothing to say. Just sit down and read. Good day and gratitude, y'all. Give you some love and some shout outs and go straight to read. Whoa, that's gonna be awesome. That is gonna be awesome. Yeah, we're gonna heal our people yet, honey. But race is the child of racism, not the father. Okay, let me get down here. Similarly, historian Ibram Kendi, in his National Book Award-winning work, Stamped from the Beginning, explains the beneficiaries of slavery, segregation, and mass incarceration have produced racist ideas of Black people being best suited for or deserving of the confines of slavery, segregation, or the jail cell. Consumers of these racist ideas have been led to believe there's something wrong with Black people, and not the policies that have enslaved, oppressed, and confined so many Black people. Kendi goes on to argue that if we truly believe that all humans are equal, then disparity in condition can only be the result of systemic discrimination. Well, after all of this right here, and things that have happened, that's continuing to happen, things that's continuing to happen, and white America not having taken any opportunity to sincerely heal themselves, there needs to be an update to everything and everybody. It needs to be an update. Call it like it is. Call it like it is for what it is. It needs to be an update. I'm not going to get off into it and stuff because I do feel like we are not the same. We not. White folks are something totally different. I don't care who talking about it, who wrote the book about it, who trying to explain it away. This right here is all the reading and explanation you need to know. Books like this, your Black Bibles is going to let you know, because of course, they not going to say it. I don't care how much they come out and condemn their people for what they've done. They're not going to tell the truth about this beastly nature right here, this cannibalistic nature right here. We're going to have to do that ourselves. Those of us that will. Those of us that came before us, we supposed to read between the lines with them. But now we at the end of this. Ain't no reading between the lines. You finna get it how it is. Yep, they something different. A whole new species, if you will. A whole new species. Don't tell me this gonna have to happen again. That rage is gonna have to present itself again for you, Black America, to know that this is what's being hidden underneath everything. Everything. Who they are, who white folks are, what they've done, what they'll do again. Yeah, I can't help but generalize your asses. Because really, hell, your garden snakes and the other toxic snakes, a snake is a snake. A snake is a snake. They all will bite your ass. I'm just, for me and my people, y'all need to distinguish if your ass is the garden snake or one of the toxic ass snakes amongst yourselves and stuff. Because as far as me and my people and stuff, we don't be around snakes. But I digress. I don't want to get off track with it and stuff, because we will just read one if I go over. But the perception of race. Race is an evolving social idea that was created to legitimize racial inequality and protect white advantage. The term white first appeared in colonial law in the late 1600s. By 1790, people were asked to claim their race on the census. By 1790, people were asked to claim their race on the census. What was that we learned about 1790? Was it the naturalization law or something like that? Yep, the naturalization and immigration law in 1790, where America was declared a white nation. Yep. America's declared a white nation, and there was a zero quota on Black people except for as slaves in 1790. So by 1790, people were asked to claim their race on the census. And by 1825 and 1790, black people were still enslaved. And by 1825, still enslaved. The perceived degrees of blood determined who would be classified as Indian. From the late 1800s through the early 20th century, as waves of immigrants entered the United States, the concept of a white race was solidified. Get out of here. No, I don't like that. When slavery in the United States was abolished in 1865, whiteness remained profoundly important as legalized racial exclusion and violence against African Americans continued in the new norm. When slavery in the United States was abolished in 1865, whiteness remained profoundly important as legalized racial exclusion and violence against African Americans continued in new forms. To have citizenship and the right citizenships in view, you had to be legally classified as white. People with non-white racial classifications began to petition the courts to be reclassified. Now the courts were in a position to decide who was white and who was not. For example, Armenians won their case to be reclassified as white with the help of a scientific witness who claimed they were scientifically Caucasian. In 1922, the Supreme Court ruled that the Japanese could not be legally white because they were scientifically classified as Mongoloid. A year later, the court stated that Asian Indians were not legally white, even though they were also classified as scientifically classified as Caucasian. To justify these contradictory rulings, the court stated that being white was based on the common understanding of the white man. The common understanding of the white man. What? To be racist? To be racist against black people. I know you're going to throw in poor people, trans people, the LG and disabled people and stuff. We ain't here talking about that. We ain't talking about all that. We're talking about black America and white America. Wow. Yeah, the court stated that being white was based on the common understanding of the white man. You could be friends with them and fall in love with them and stuff, but you better not ever let them get a hold of them reins. Is that the understanding? I'm just saying the understanding of the white man. Is that their understanding stuff? Black man, you have no idea. Honey, please. In other words, people already seen as white got to decide who was white. The metaphor of the United States as the great melting pot in which immigrants from around the world come together and melt into one unified society through the process of assimilation is a cherished idea. Oh, well, now ain't it today? Everybody classified as white. So everybody agreed to partake of that understanding, that common understanding of the white man, which is to oppress the black man. So everybody agreed to that, which in a roundabout way is exactly what I've been saying. Everybody condoned white America. Everybody sided with white America. Yep, wow. But I could be wrong. We'll see. I'm just trying to put together some dots here. Once new immigrants learn English and adapt to American culture and customs, they become Americans. In reality, only European immigrants were allowed to melt or assimilate into dominant culture in the 19th and 20th centuries because regardless of their ethnic identities, these immigrants were perceived to be white and thus could belong. So see, yeah, here today, to be politically correct and call each group as they are, I don't even know. I'm fine calling their asses white, like they have wanted to be, like they have been classified to be, like they received the privileges and of whiteness. Yeah, I'll begin to feel like, damn, I'm gonna have to learn about other groups of people and stuff. No, You're melanin and non-melanin. According to this right here, you're black and you're white. You're black or you're white. Now, people want to be like Faith. I'm not white. I'm not classified as white. My collective might be, but I got I'm me. You know, Spanish or whatever it is on mine. I don't have them classifying me as white. Then hey, that's kudos to you. Being on the right side, being loyal. Because don't seem like the world been loyal at all. And it's also they can manipulate Black America. I digress. Race is a social construction, and thus who is included in the category of white changes over time. As the Italian American man from my workshop noted, European ethnic groups such as the Irish, Italian, and Polish were excluded in the past, but where they may have been originally divided in terms of origin, European immigrants became racially united through assimilation. This process of assimilation, speaking English, eating American foods, discarding customs that set them apart, refied, R-E-I-F-I-E-D, refied the perception of American as white. Racial identification in the larger society plays a fundamental role in identity development in how we see ourselves. If we look white, we are treated as white in society at large. For example, people of Southern European heritage, such as Spanish or Portuguese, or from the former Soviet Union, especially if they are new immigrants or were raised by immigrants, are likely to have a stronger sense of ethnic identity than will someone of the same ethnicity whose ancestors have been here for generations. Yet, although their internal identity may be different, if they pass as white, they will still have a white experience externally. If they look white, the default assumption will be that they are white, and thus they will be responded to as white because they look white. The incongruity between their internal ethnicity identity, their internal ethnic identity, Portuguese or Spanish, whatever the case may be, and the external racial experience, white, would provide a more complex or nuanced sense of identity than that of someone who doesn't have a strong ethnic identity. However, they are still granted white status and the advantages that come with that status. Today, these advantages are de facto rather than de jure, but are nonetheless powerful in shaping our daily lives. It is on each of us who passes white to identify how these advantages shape us, not to deny them whole scale. Because race is a product of social forces, it has also manifested itself along class lines. Poor and working class people were not always perceived as fully white. In a society that grants fewer opportunities to those not seen as white, economic and racial forces are inseparable. However, poor and working class whites were eventually granted full entry into whiteness as a way to exploit labor. If poor white folks were focused on feeling superior to those below them in status, they were less focused on those above. Yep. The poor and working classes, if united across race, could be a powerful force. But racial divisions have served to keep them from organizing against the owning class who profits from their labor. Still, although working class white people experience classism, they aren't also experiencing racism. I grew up in poverty and felt a deep sense of shame about being poor. But I always knew that I was white and that it was better to be white. Racism. To understand racism, we need to first distinguish it from mere prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is prejudged about another person based on the social groups to which that person belongs. Prejudice consists of thoughts and feelings, including stereotypes, attitudes, and generalizations that are based on little or no experience and then are projected onto everyone from that group. Our prejudices tend to be shared because we swim in the same cultural water and absorb the same messages. Well, yeah, we're going to have to update things because I'm suspicious of white folks. I am suspicious of white folks. Say it's generalized if you want to. I don't give a damn. I do not give a damn because if the situation is right, if circumstances set themselves up again, honey, miss me with the bullshit. Miss me with that bullshit. And folks still don't want to come right out and say it. Ask white America, what was that beastly motherfucking nature inside of y'all? Where is it at? Everybody wanna, but I digress. Let's just read, right? All humans have prejudice. We cannot avoid it. If I am aware that a social group exists, I will have gained information about that group from the society around me. This information helps me make sense of the group from my cultural framework. People who claim not to be prejudiced are demonstrating a profound lack of self-awareness. Ironically, they are demonstrating the power of socialization. We have all been taught in schools, through movies, and from family members, teachers, and clergy that it is important not to be prejudiced. Unfortunately, the prevailing belief that prejudice is bad causes us to deny its unavoidable reality. I'm glad I read the other books before I read this. Prejudice is foundational to understanding white fragility because suggesting that white people have racial prejudice is perceived as saying that we are bad and should be ashamed. We then feel the need to defend our character rather than explore the inevitable racial prejudices we have absorbed so that we might change them. In this way, our misunderstanding about what prejudice is protects it. Discrimination is action based on prejudice. Ooh-wee. These actions include ignoring, exclusion, threats, ridicule, slander, and violence. For example, if hatred is the emotion we feel because of our prejudice, extreme acts of discrimination, such as violence, may follow. These forms of discrimination are generally clear and recognizable, but if what we feel is more subtle, such as mild discomfort, the discrimination is likely to also be subtle, even harder to detect. Most of us, white folks, can acknowledge that we do feel some unease around certain groups of people, if only a heightened sense of self-consciousness. But this feeling doesn't come naturally. The hell if it don't? Our unease comes from living separate from a group of people while simultaneously absorbing incomplete or erroneous information about them. When the prejudice causes me to act differently, I am less relaxed around you, or I avoid interacting with you. I am now discriminating. Prejudice always manifests itself in action because the way I see the world drives my actions in the world. Everyone has prejudice and everyone discriminates. Given this reality, inserting the qualifier reverse is nonsensical. You know how they be like reverse discrimination, reverse racism, and when a racial group's collective prejudice is backed by the power of legal authority and institutional control, it is transformed into racism, a far-reaching system that functions independently from the intentions or self-images of individual actors. J. Kahilani Kuanu. That's Jkehaulani. Kauani. J. Kaunai. Professor of American Studies and Anthropology at Wesleyan University, explains racism is a structure, not an event. American women's struggle for suffrage illustrates how institutional power transforms prejudice and discrimination into structures of oppression. Everyone has prejudices and discriminates, but structures of oppression go well beyond individuals. While women could be prejudiced and discriminate against men in individual interactions, women as a group could not deny men their civil rights. But men as a group could and did deny women their civil rights. Men could do so because they controlled all the institutions. Therefore, The only way women could gain suffrage was for men to grant it to them. Women could not grant suffrage to themselves. Similarly, racism, like sexism and other forms of oppression, occurs when a racial group's prejudice is backed by legal authority and institutional control. Hold up, did we get farther than this? No, I don't think so. This authority and control transforms individual prejudices into a far-reaching system that no longer depends on the good intentions of individual actors. It becomes the default of the society and is reproduced automatically. Racism is a system, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the intersection of race and gender in the example of suffrage. White men granted suffrage to women, but only granted full access to white women. Women of color were denied full access into the voting rights of 1865. The system of racism begins with ideology, which refers to the big ideas that are reinforced throughout society. From birth, we are conditioned into accepting and not questioning these ideas. Ideology is reinforced across society. For example, in schools and textbooks, political speeches, movies, advertising, holiday celebrations, and words and phrases. These ideas are also reinforced through social penalties when someone questions an ideology and through the limited availability of alternative ideas. Ideologies are the frameworks through which we are taught to represent, interpret, understand, and make sense of social existence. Because these ideas are constantly reinforced, they are very hard to ignore, very hard to avoid believing, and because these ideas are constantly reinforced, they are very hard to avoid believing and internalizing. Examples of ideology in the United States include individualism, the superiority of capitalism as an economic system, and democracy as a political system, consumerism as a desirable lifestyle, and meritocracy. Anyone can succeed if he or she works hard. The racial ideology that circulates in the United States rationalizes racial hierarchies as the outcome of a natural order resulting from either genetics or individual effort or talent. Those who don't succeed are not just not smart or just not as capable naturally and just not deserving or hardworking. Ideologies that obscure racism as a system of inequality are perhaps the most powerful racial forces because once we accept our positions within racial hierarchies, these positions seem natural and difficult to question, even when we are disadvantaged by them. In this way, very little external pressure needs to be applied to keep people in their places. Once the rationalizations for inequality are internalized, both sides will uphold the relationship. White folks will always have the high head, like they all the shit, and black folks will always feel like they inferior. We this is us. We always got to be lack and slack and last. Racism is deeply embedded in the fabric of our society. It is not limited to a single act or person, nor does it move back and forth, one day benefiting whites and another day or even era benefiting people of color. The direction of power between white people and people of color is historic, traditional, and normalized in ideology. Racism differs from individual racial prejudice and racial discrimination in the historical accumulation and ongoing use of institutional power and authority to support the prejudice and to systematically enforce discriminatory behaviors with far-reaching effects. That was long, wasn't it? Racism differs from individual racial prejudice and racial discrimination in the historical accumulation and ongoing use of institutional power and authority to support the prejudice and to systematically enforce discriminatory behaviors with far-reaching effects. No matter how high you get up on that totem pole, you still just a nigga. People of color may also hold prejudices and discriminate against white people. but they lack the social and institutional power that transforms their prejudice and discrimination into racism. That impact of their prejudice on whites is temporary and contextual. White people hold the social and the institutional positions in society to infuse their racial prejudice into the laws, politics, practices, and norms of society in a way that people of color do not and cannot. A person of color may refuse to wait on me if I enter a shop, but people of color cannot pass legislation that prohibits me and anyone like me from buying a home in a certain neighborhood. People of color may also hold prejudices and discriminate against their own people and other groups of color. But this bias ultimately holds them down and in this way reinforces the system of racism that still benefits white people. Racism is a society-wide dynamic that occurs at the group level. When I say that only whites can be racist, I mean that in the United States, only white people have the collective social and institutional power and privilege over people of color. People of color do not have this power and privilege over white people. Many whites see racism as a thing of the past, and of course, we are well served not to acknowledge it in the present. Yet, racial disparity between white people and people of color continues to exist in every institution across society, and in many cases is increasing rather than decreasing. Although segregation may make these disparities difficult for white people to see and easy to deny, racial disparities and their effects on overall quality of life have been extensively documented by a wide range of agencies. Among those documenting these challenges are the U.S. Census Bureau, the United Nations, academic groups such as the UCLA Civil Rights Project, and the Metropolis Project. And don't forget nonprofits such as the NAACP and the Anti-Defamation League. Scholar Marilyn Frye, Frye, uses the metaphor of a bird cage to describe the interlocking forces of oppression. If you stand close to a bird cage and press your face against the wires, your perception of the bars will disappear and you will have an almost unobstructed view of the bird. If you turn your head to examine one wire of the cage closely, you would not be able to see the other wires. If your understanding of the cage is based on this myopic view, you may not understand why the bird doesn't just go around the single wire and fly away. You might even assume that the bird liked or chose its place in the cage. But if you step back and look at a wider view, you will begin to see that the wires come together in an interlocking pattern, a pattern that works to hold the bird firmly in place. It now becomes clear that a network of systematically related barriers surround the bird. Taken individually, none of these barriers would be that difficult for the bird to get around, but because they interlock with each other, they thoroughly restrict the bird. While some birds may escape from the cage, most will not. And certainly those that do escape will have to navigate many barriers that birds outside the cage do not. The birdcage metaphor helps us understand why racism can be so hard to see and recognize. We have a limited view. Without recognizing how our own position in relation to the bird defines how much of the cage we can see, we rely on simple situations, exceptions, and anecdotal evidence for our understanding, rather than on the broader interlocking patterns. Although there are always exceptions to the rule, the patterns are consistent and well documented. People of color are confined and shaped by forces and barriers that are not accidental, occasional, or avoidable. These forces are systematically related to each other in ways that restrict their movement. Individual whites may be against racism, but they still benefit from a system that privileges white people as a group. David Wellman succinctly summarizes racism as a system of advantage based on race. These advantages are referred to as white privilege, a sociological concept referring to advantages that are taken for granted by white people and that cannot be similarly enjoyed by people of color in the same context: government, community, workplace, school. But let me be clear: stating that racism privileges white people does not mean that individual white people do not struggle or face barriers. It does mean that we do not face the particular barriers of racism. As with prejudice and discrimination, we can remove the qualifier reverse from any discussion of racism. By definition, racism is a deeply embedded historical system of institutional power. It is not fluid and does not change direction simply because a few individuals of color manage to excel. So all your celebrities and your athletes, yeah, racism still racism. It don't change. That don't mean shit. It's not fluid and it does not change direction simply because a few individuals of color manage to excel. Whiteness as a position of status. Being perceived as white carries more than a mere racial classification. It is a social and institutional status, an identity imbued with legal, political, economic, and social rights and privileges that are denied to others. Reflecting on the social and economic advantages of being classified as white, critical race scholar Cheryl Harris coined the phrase whiteness as property. Oh, wow, we got property, uh, about white slave owners, and now we got whiteness as property. We're finding it, yeah. Tracing the evolving concept of whiteness across legal history, she explains by according whiteness as actual legal status, an aspect of identity was converted into an external object of property, moving whiteness from privileged identity to a vested interest. The law's construction of whiteness defined and affirmed critical aspects of identity. Who is white? Of privilege, what benefits accrue to that status, and of property, what legal entitlements arise from that status. Whiteness at various times signifies and is deployed as identity, status, and property, sometimes singularly, sometimes in tandem. Mm, Out of thin air. Harris's analysis is useful because it shows how identity and perceptions of identity can grant or deny resources. These resources include self-worth, visibility, positive expectations, psychological freedom from the tether of race, freedom of movement, the sense of belonging, and a sense of entitlement to all of the above. We might think of whiteness as all the aspects of being white, aspects that go beyond mere physical differences and are related to the meaning and resulting material advantage of being defined as white in society. What is granted and how it is granted based on that meaning. Instead of the typical focus on how racism hurts people of color, to examine whiteness is to focus on how racism elevates white people. Whiteness rests upon a foundational premise, the definition of whites as the norm or standard for human, and people of color as the deviation from that norm. Whiteness is not acknowledged by white people, and the white reference point is assumed to be universal and is imposed on everyone. Everybody got to see white people as the number one people, the number one human, because that's how white folks done set it up. That's how white folks have set it up. And everybody, it's been imposed on everybody. It's been forced on everybody to have that mindset. And many people push back against that mindset and let white America know y'all motherfuckers ain't even, you just got here. You ain't really mature and adult yet to even learn how to exist on the planet with other things, be it a person or a tree or fish, water, whatever. Ain't nobody ever been able to do it. Nope. I ain't talking about us. Because Farrakhan done said quite a few things. Khalid done said quite a few things. We have ours that have said and let them be known. But other people, yeah, they feel some type of way. They can't do it. Maybe they will now. I don't know. But let's read. People of color, including W.B. Du Bois and James Baldwin, have been writing about whiteness for decades, if not centuries. These writers urged white people to turn their attention onto themselves to explore what it means to be white in a society that is so divided by race. For example, in 1946, a French reporter asked expatriate writer Richard Wright his thoughts on the Negro problem in the United States. Wright replied, "There isn't any Negro problem. There is only a white problem." As Wright pointed out, racism against people of color doesn't occur in a vacuum. Yet the idea that racism in the United States can operate outside white people is reinforced through celebrations such as Black History Month, in which we study the Civil War and Civil Rights eras as if they occurred separately from all U.S. history. In addition to the general way these color-based celebrations take white people out of the equation, there are specific ways that the achievements of people of color are separated from the overall social context and depoliticized. For instance, in stories we tell about Black cultural heroes. The story of Jackie Robinson is a classic example of how whiteness obscures racism by rendering white people, white privilege, and racist institutions invisible. Robinson is often celebrated as the first African American to break the color line and play in Major League Baseball. While Robinson was certainly an amazing baseball player, this storyline depicts him as racially special, a Black man who broke the color line himself. The subtext is that Robinson finally had what it took to play with white people, as if no other Black athlete before him was strong enough to compete at that level. Imagine if instead the story went something like this: Jackie Robinson, the first Black man white people allowed to play Major League Baseball. This version makes a critical distinction because no matter how fantastic a player Robinson was, he simply could not play in the major league if white people who controlled the institutions did not allow it. Were he to walk onto the field before being granted permission by white owners and policymakers, the police would have removed him and probably beat his ass. Narratives of racial exceptionality obscure the reality of ongoing institutional white control while reinforcing the ideologies of individualism and meritocracy. They also do whites a disservice by obscuring the white allies who, behind the scenes, worked hard and long to open the field to African American players. These allies could serve as much needed role models for other white people, although we also need to acknowledge that in the case of the desegregation of baseball, there was an economic incentive for these allies. And it was. It really was, y'all. I wonder, do I got that? This what we gave up our own baseball teams. We gave up everything. Negro leagues or the Negro leagues or major leagues. Yeah, we're gonna get to this. Yep, I took it out of the grandbaby's library. I took quite a few of their books out. Sure did. I just started thinking about it because we were talking about Jackie Robinson. But let's read. I am not against Black History Month, but it should be celebrated in a way that doesn't reinforce whiteness. For those who ask why there is no White History Month, the answer illustrates how whiteness works. White history is implied in the absence of its acknowledgement. White history is the norm for history. Thus, I would need to qualify that we are speaking about Black history or women's history, suggests that these contributions lie outside the norm. Ruth Frankenberg, a premier white scholar in the field of whiteness studies, describes whiteness as multidimensional. These dimensions include a location of structural advantage, a standpoint from which white people look at ourselves, at other people, and at society, and at a set of cultural practices that are not named or acknowledged. To say that whiteness is a location of structural advantage is to recognize that to be white is to be in a privileged position within society and its institutions, to be seen as an insider, and to be granted the benefits of belonging. This position automatically bestows unearned advantages. White people control all major institutions of society, and white people set the policies and practices that other people must live by. Although rare individual people of color may be inside the circles of power, like Colin Powell and Clarence Thomas and Marco Rubio and Barack Obama, they support the status quo and they don't challenge racism in any way significant enough to be threatening. They don't. Take Obama. Obama did not challenge the status quo. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing that he challenged the status quo. I mean, if he did put a hold, if it truly was a time limit on slavery, and that's what all of this is about, because now they finna reveal it. They finna let your black ass know. Yeah, we've been setting you up all this time. We've been having our people and other people as pawns to set y'all up all this time because it was a time limit on slavery. And we calling it back. We pre-proposing again. Why his ass didn't say something? Why his motherfucking ass didn't say something, even if it was in a roundabout way? You better get yourself together before history repeats itself. I'm just saying, for me, in my opinion. Their positions of power do not mean these public figures don't experience racism. And we know Obama did. That man got so many death threats when he was a president, and probably more after. But yeah, he was getting them. Obama endured insults and resistance previously unheard of, but the status quo remains intact. To say that whiteness is a standpoint is to say that a significant aspect of white identity is to see oneself as an individual, outside or innocent of race, just human. White folk just see themselves as human, just human. And because your black ass don't know no better, you see him as just human. And with the indoctrination and the traumatization you've been on under, you see him as the best human. But we're gonna get through all of that. Honey, so much is being revealed on all fronts. So much is being revealed. Stop doubting yourself, where you come from, what's inside of you. Stop doubting your exceptionality, baby. Because it ain't even like they told us about nothing. White America projected everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. That little 1-2 notches that Faith, they didn't project that fine. So be it. Keep them little 1 or 2 notches. Keep them 1 or 2 notches. That still means mostly everything, damn near all of it. Hell, and when you put it all together, it just swallows up that little bit that your ass is talking about. Projected it all onto Black America. This standpoint views white people and their interests as central to and representative of humanity. This standpoint views white people and their interests as representative of humanity. Huh. White people also produce and reinforce the dominant narratives of society, such as individualism and meritocracy. And they use these narratives to explain the positions of other racial groups. These narratives allow us to congratulate ourselves on our success within the instructions of society and blame other people for their lack of success. To say that whiteness includes a set of cultural practices that are not recognized by white people is to understand racism as a network of norms and actions that consistently create advantage for white people and disadvantages for people of color. These norms and actions include basic rights and benefits of the doubt, purportedly granted to all, but which are actually only consistently afforded to white people. The dimensions of racism benefiting white people are usually invisible to white people. We are unaware of or do not acknowledge the meaning of race and its impact on our lives. Thus, we do not recognize or admit to white privilege and the norms that produce and maintain it. It follows that to name whiteness, much less suggest that it has meaning and grants unearned advantage, will be deeply disappointing. It follows that to name whiteness, much less to suggest that it has meaning and grants unearned advantage, would be deeply disconcerting and destabilizing, thus triggering the protective responses of white fragility. So white folks fragile now. Where was all this white fragility at? There it is. You're fragile. Cause your ass don't want the truth to be told. Could that be why your ass is fragile? In other words, running away, ignoring the silent treatment. White supremacy. When we look back to the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, we might think of white supremacists as the people we saw in photos and on television, beating black people at lunch counters, bombing black churches, and screaming at little Ruby Bridges, the first African American child to integrate an all white elementary school in Louisiana in 1960. Today, we might think of the self described outright white nationalists. Oh, we might think of the self described outright white nationalists marching with torches in Virginia and shouting blood and soil as they protest the removal of Confederate war memorials. Most white people do not identify with these images of white supremacists, and so they take great umbrage to the term being used more broadly. Well, that's so fucking bad, ain't it? For sociologists and those involved in current racial justice movements, however, white supremacy is a descriptive and useful term to capture the all-encompassing centrality and assumed superiority of people defined and perceived as white, and the practices based on this assumption. White supremacy in this context does not refer to individual white people and their individual intentions or actions, but to an overarching political, economic, and social system of denomination. Again, racism is a structure, not an event. While hate groups that openly proclaim white superiority do exist, and this term refers to them also, the popular consciousness solely associates white supremacy with these radical groups. This reductive definition obscures the reality of a larger system at work and prevents us from addressing this system. White racism in other cultures exists based on different ideas of racial group that's superior to the other. The United States is a global power, and through movies and mass media, corporate culture, advertising, U.S.-owned manufacturing, military presence, historical colonial relations, missionary work, and other means, white supremacy is circulated globally, all across the world, all across this planet, globally. The only ones that's void of white folks bullshit is like the Senegalese, those that refuse to have anything to do with any part of society. Now, but I digress. This powerful ideology promotes the idea of whiteness as the ideal for humanity well beyond the West. White supremacy is especially relevant in countries that have a history of colonialism by Western nations. In his book, The Racial Contract, Charles W. Mills argues that the racial contract is a tactic and sometimes explicit agreement among members of the people of Europe to assert, promote, and maintain the ideal of white supremacy in relation to all other people of the world. This agreement is an intentional and integral characteristic of the social contract, underwriting all the other social contracts. White supremacy has shaped a system of global European domination. White supremacy has shaped a system of global European domination. And she said it all over the world. It brings into existence whites and non-whites, full persons and sub-persons. It influences white moral theory, white moral theory, and moral psychology, and is imposed on non-whites through ideological conditioning and violence. Mills says that what has usually been taken as the racist exception has really been the rule. What has usually been taken as the racist exception has really been the rule. What has been taken as the rule has really been the exception. And what's been taken as the rule, racial equality, has really been the rule. Has really been the exception. Oh. What has usually been taken as the racist exception that has really been the rule. What has been taken as the rule, racial equality, has really been the exception. Mills describes white supremacy as the unnamed political system that has made the modern world what it is today. He notes that although white supremacy has shaped Western political thought for hundreds of years, it is never named. In this way, white supremacy is rendered invisible while other political systems, socialism, capitalism, fascism, are identified and studied. White supremacy ain't never been studied. In fact, much of white supremacy's power is drawn from its invisibility, the taken for granted aspects that underwrite all other political and social contracts. Mills makes 2 points that are critical to our understanding of white fragility. First, white supremacy is never acknowledged. Second, we cannot study any socio-political system without addressing how that system is mediated by race. The failure to acknowledge white supremacy protects it from examination and holds it in place. In Ta-Nehisi Coates' essay, The Case for Reparations, he makes a similar point. To ignore the fact that one of the oldest republics in the world was erected on the foundation of white supremacy, to pretend that the problems of a dual society are the same as the problems of unregulated capitalism, is to cover the sin of national plunder with the sin of national lying. The lie ignores the fact that reducing American poverty and ending white supremacy are not the same. White supremacy is not merely the work of hot-headed demagogues or a matter of false consciousness, but a force so fundamental to America that it is difficult to imagine the country without it. In light of the reality of historical and continual white supremacy, white complaints about reverse racism by programs intended to ameliorate the basic levels of discrimination are profoundly petty and delusional, as Mills summarizes. Both globally and within particular nation states, then, white people, Europeans, and their descendants continue to benefit from the racial contract, which creates a world in their cultural image, political states differentially favoring their interests, an economy structured around the racial exploitation of others, and a moral psychology skewed consciously or unconsciously toward privileging them, taking the status quo of different racial entitlement as normatively legitimate and not to be investigated further. Race scholars use the term white supremacy to describe a social, political, economic system of domination based on racial categories that benefit those defined and perceived as white. This system of structural power privileges centralizes and it elevates white people as a group. If, for example, we look at the racial breakdown of the people who control our institutions, we see telling numbers for 2016 and 2017. 10 richest Americans, 100% white, 7 of whom are among the 10 richest in the world. The United States Congress, 90% white. The United States governors, 96% white. Top military advisors, 100% white. President and vice president, 100% white. The United States House Freedom Caucus, 99% white. The current U.S. presidential cabinet, 91% white. People who decide which TV shows we see, 93% white. People who decide which books we read, 90% white. People who decide which news is covered, 85% white. People who decide which one, people who direct it, no, wait a minute. People who decide which music is produced, 95% white. People who directed the 100 top grossing films of all time, worldwide, 95% white. Teachers, 82% white. Full-time college professors, 84% white. Owners of men's professional football teams, 97% white. I'm going to look these up and see if there's any increase in percentages for us and decrease in percentages for them. But don't hold your breath because it may not be. These numbers are not describing minor organizations, nor are these institutions special interest groups. The groups listed above are the most powerful in the country. These numbers are not a matter of good people versus bad people. They represent power and control by a racial group that is in the position to disseminate and protect its own self-image, its own worldview, and its own interests across the entire society. One of the most potent ways white supremacy is disseminated is through media representations. Media representations, which have a profound impact on how we see the world. Those who write and direct films are our cultural narrators. These stories they tell shape our worldviews. Given that the majority of white people live in racial isolation from people of color, and black people in particular, and have very few authentic cross-racial relationships, white people are deeply influenced by the racial messages in films. Consider one statistic from the preceding list. Of the 100 top grossing films worldwide in 2016, 95 were directed by white Americans, 99 of them by men. That is an incredibly homogeneous group of directors because these men are most likely at the top of the social hierarchy in terms of race, class, and gender. They are the least likely to have a wide variety of authentic, egalitarian, cross-racial relationships. Yet, they are in a position to represent the racial other. Their representations of the other are thereby extremely narrow and problematic. And yet they are reinforced over and over and over again. Further, these biased representations have been disseminated worldwide. While white supremacy originated in the West, it circulates globally. Your devil traveling here and there, to and fro throughout the world, all over the world, all across the world. Read between the lines. Black America. If it ain't true, white America better speak up with proof. They better prove it because everything else proves exactly who the devil is, who Lucifer, Satan is, just because you projected all of that onto a people that have been traumatized, slain, and riddled with bullets, filled with so much self-hate that does not negate the fact of who Satan really is, in my opinion. This to me. But let's read. White resistance to the term white supremacy prevents us from examining how these messages shape us. Explicit white supremacists understand this. Christian Picciolini, 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 a former white nationalist, explains that white nationalists recognize that they had to distance themselves from the term racist and white supremacy to gain broader appeal. He describes the alt-right and white nationalist movements as the culmination of a 30-year effort to massage the white supremacy message. We recognized back then that we were turning away the average American white racists and that we needed to look and speak more like our neighbors. The idea we had was to blend in, normalize, make the messages more palatable. Derek Black, godson of David Duke and the former key youth leader. Oh, and he was the former key youth leader, the number one youth leader. And he's the godson to David Duke. In the white nationalist movement, explains my whole talk was the fact that you could run as Republicans and say things like we need to shut down immigration. We need to fight affirmative action. We need to end globalism. And you could win these positions. Maybe as long as you didn't get outed as a white nationalist and get all the controversy that comes along with it. Today's white nationalists are not the first to be recognized. I don't think we're going to read 2 chapters. Today's white nationalists are not the first to recognize the importance of distancing oneself from more explicit expressions of white supremacy. In a 1981 interview, Lee Atwater, Republican political strategist and advisor to Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, explained what came to be known as the Southern strategy, how to appeal to the racism of white Southern voters without pronouncing it openly. I was thinking about something that Defiant Lawyer was telling us about. Yeah, it's moths in here because of the patio. And was it in disparate? What Defiant Lawyer he was talking about was in disparate. Let me write that down right fast before I forget it. In disparate something. It's been months since he had said it, but I forgot it like months ago. And I just remembered it. That's what they do is subtly. They be racist towards your ass subtly, and you don't even know it. Because instead of saying and being able to prove that, yeah, he called me a nigger, and you can prove that, but the in disparate something, they don't have to call that to you as long as you can prove that it was, a racist act and stuff. Well, they're doing away with that in this disparateness. They're doing away with that. Well, let's read. You start out in 1954 by saying, nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts you. Backfires. That's what he's telling them. This white man telling his other white folks. So you say stuff like forced or forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. You're getting so abstract now that you're talking about cutting taxes. And all these things that you're talking about are totally economic things. And a byproduct of them is that black people get hurt worse than white people. There it is. See, you're getting so abstract now by talking about forced busing and states' rights and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now that you're talking about cutting taxes. And all these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And a byproduct of them is that black people get hurt worse than whites. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. But what I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we are doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut this is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger. Honey, all I know is put the focus on you and your people. It's never ending. White folks never stop. Our umbrage at the term white supremacy only serves to protect the processes it describes and obscure the mechanism of racial inequality. Still, I understand that the term is very charged for many white people, especially older white people, who associate the term with extreme hate groups. However, I hope to have made clear that white supremacy is something much more pervasive and subtle than the actions of explicit white nationalists. White supremacy describes the culture we live in, a culture that positions white people and all that is associated with them, whiteness, as ideal. White supremacy is more than the idea that white people are superior to people of color. It is the deeper premise that supports this idea, the definition of whites as the norm or standard for humans, and people of color as the deviation from that norm. Naming white supremacy changes the conversation in two key ways. It makes the system visible and shifts the locus of change onto white people where it belongs. It also points us in the direction of the lifelong work that is uniquely ours, challenging our complicity with and investment in racism. In other words, challenging our complicity with racism and our investment in racism. This does not mean that people of color do not play a part, but that the full weight of responsibility rests with those who control the institutions. The white racial frame. Sociologist Joe Fegan coined the term white racial frame to describe how white people circulate and reinforce racial messages that position white people as superior. In this way, the white racial frame rests on and is a key mechanism of white supremacy. The frame is deep and extensive, with thousands of stored bits. These bits are pieces of cultural information, images, stories, interpretations, omissions, silences that are passed along from one person and group to the next, and from one generation to the next. Did you hear that? Images, stories. All I keep thinking about is that black man's hand. That the white man got the black man's hand, the souvenirs from the lynchings, and kept the hand in his pocket. And he would raise that hand up. That old hand should have, I don't know. Yeah. And all stuff like that is passed from generation to generation. You don't know Black America because you ain't never been in no white folks' attic. You ain't been in their basement and shit looking around and stuff. They been in your motherfucking attic, in your basement, comfortable in your house. But see, they got something to hide in theirs. But it says right here, all this stuff is passed from person to person, group to group, generation to generation. Sabrina don't get a lot of stuff, but Karen motherfucking ass got everything. But these bits circulate both explicitly and implicitly. For example, through movies, television, news, and other media and stories told to us by family and friends. By constantly using the white racial frame, we interpret social relations and integrate new bits. White people reinforce the frame even deeper. By constantly using the white racial frame to interpret social relations and integrate new bits, white people reinscribe the frame even deeper. At the most general level, the racial frame views white people as superior in culture and achievement and views people of color as generally of less social, economic, and political consequence. People of color are seen as inferior to white people in the making and keeping of the nation. At the next level of framing, because social institutions like education, medicine, the next level of framing because of social institutions like education, medicine, law, government, finance, and the military are controlled by whites. White dominance is remarkable and taken for granted. These whites are that whites are disproportionately enriched and privileged via these institutions is also taken for granted. We are entitled to more privileges and resources because we are better people. At the deepest level of the white frame, negative stereotypes and images of racial others as inferior are reinforced and accepted. At this level, corresponding emotions such as fear, contempt, and resentment are also stored. The frame includes both negative understandings of people of color and positive understandings of white people and white institutions. It is so internalized, so submerged that it is never consciously considered or challenged by most white people. To get a sense of the white racial frame below the surface of your conscious awareness, think back to the earliest time that you were aware that people from racial groups other than your own existed. People of color recall a sense of always having been aware, while most white people recall being aware by at least by age 5. If you lived in a primarily white environment and are having trouble remembering, think about Disney movies, music videos, sports heroes, Chinese food, Aunt Jemima syrup, Uncle Ben's rice, the Taco Bell Chihuahua, Columbus Day, Apple from The Simpsons, and the donkey from Shrek. Reflect on these representations and ask yourself, did your parents tell you that race didn't matter and that everyone was equal? Did they have many friends of color? If people of color did not live in your neighborhood, why didn't they? Where did they live? What images, sounds, and smells did you associate with these other neighborhoods? What kind of activities did you think went on there? Were you encouraged to visit these neighborhoods? Or were you discouraged from visiting these neighborhoods? What about schools? What made a school good? Who went to good schools? Who went to bad schools? If the schools in your area were racially segregated, as most schools in the United States are, why didn't you attend school together? If this is because you lived in different neighborhoods, why did you live in different neighborhoods? Were their schools considered equal to, better than, or worse than yours? If there was busing in your town, in which direction did it go? Who was bused into whose schools? Why did the busing go in one direction and not the other? If you went to school together, did y'all sit together in the cafeteria? If not, why not? Were the honors and advanced placement classes and lower track classes equally racially integrated? If not, why not? White folks, now think about your teachers. When was the first time you had a teacher of the same race as yours? Did you often have teachers of the same race as your own? Most white people, in reflecting on these questions, realize that they almost always had white teachers. Many did not have a teacher of color until college. Conversely, most people of color have rarely, if ever, had a teacher who reflected their own race. Why it is important to reflect on our teachers in our effort to uncover our racial socialization and messages. Why is it important to reflect on our teachers in our effort to uncover our racial socialization and the messages we receive from schools? As you answer these questions, white folks, also consider which races were geographically closer to you than others. If your school was perceived as racially diverse, which races was most present, represented? And how did the racial discrimination affect the sense of value associated with the school? For example, if white and Asian heritage students were the primary racial groups in your school was likely have been seen as better than a school with more representation from Black and Latinx students. What were you learning about the racial hierarchy and your place in it from geography? White folks, if you lived and went to school in racial segregation, as most people in the United States do, you had to have made sense of the incongruity between the claim that everyone was equal and that and the lived. You had to have made the sense of the incongruity between the claim that everyone was equal and the lived reality of segregation. If you lived in an integrated neighborhood and or attended an integrated school, you had to make sense of the segregation in most of society outside the school, especially in segments considered of higher value or quality. It is also highly likely that there was still racial separation within the school. And for those of us who may have grown up in more integrated environments due to social class or changing neighborhood demographics, it is unlikely that integration has been sustained in our current lives. Reflection on these questions provides an entry point into the deeper messages that we all absorb and that shape our behavior and responses below the conscious level. In the United States, race is encoded in geography. I can name every neighborhood in my city and its racial makeup. I can also tell you if a neighborhood is coming up or down in terms of home equity, and this will be based primarily on how its racial demographics are changing. Going up, it'll be getting whiter. Going down, it'll be getting less white. When I was a child, posters on my school walls and television shows like Sesame Street told me explicitly that all people were equal, but we simply did not live together across race. I had to make sense of this separation. If we was equal, why do we live separately? It must be normal and natural to live apart. Certainly no adult in my life was complaining about the separation. And at the deeper level, it must be righteous that we live apart, since we are better people. How did I get the message that we were better people? Consider how we talk about white neighborhoods: good, safe, sheltered, clean, desirable. By definition, other spaces, not white, are bad, dangerous, crime ridden, and to be avoided. These neighborhoods are not positioned as sheltered and innocent. In these ways, the white racial frame is under construction. Predominantly white neighborhoods are not outside of race, they are teeming with race. Every moment we spend in those environments reinforces powerful aspects of the white racial frame, including a limited worldview, a reliance on deeply problematic depictions of people of color, confident segregation with no sense that there might be value in knowing people of color, and internalized superiority. In turn, our capacity to engage constructively across racial lines becomes profoundly limited. To illustrate an early lesson in white racial framing, imagine that a white mother and her white child are in the grocery store. The child sees a black man and shouts, "Mommy, that man's skin is black." Several people, including the man, turn around and look. How do you imagine the mother would respond? Most people would immediately put their finger to their mouth and say, "Shh." When white people are asked what the mother might be feeling, most agree that she is likely to feel anxiety, tension, and embarrassment. Indeed, many of us have had similar experiences wherein the message was clear: we should not talk openly about race. When I use this example with my students, sometimes a student will say that the mother is just teaching her child to be polite. In other words, naming this man's race would be impolite. But why? Why? What is so shameful about being black? So shameful that we would rather pretend that we don't notice. The mother's reaction would probably be the same if the man had a visible disability of some kind or was obese. But if the child had seen a white person that shouted, "Mommy, that man's skin is white," it is unlikely that the mother would feel the same anxiety, tension, and embarrassment that would have accompanied the first statement. Now imagine that the child had shouted out how handsome the man was or how strong he was. These statements would probably be met with chuckles and smiles. The child would likely not be hushed because we consider these statements compliments. The example of a child publicly calling out a black man's race and embarrassing the mother illustrates several aspects of white children's racial socialization. First, children learn that it is taboo to openly talk about race. Second, they learn that people should pretend not to notice undesirable aspects that define some people as less valuable than others. A large birthmark on someone's face, a person using a wheelchair, a person walking with a limp, a person with a bionic leg or a bionic arm. These lessons manifest themselves later in life when white adults, drop their voices before naming the race of someone who isn't right. And especially so if the race being named is black. They be like, "She's a black girl," whisper. If we add all the compliments we make about people of color privately, when we are less careful, we may begin to recognize how white children are taught to navigate race. Woo, thank you. Yeah, I can't read chapter 3. I'm so sleepy. But this will be racism after the civil rights movement. Ooh, I was just wondering when that kid said that, when that baby said that. And it's possible they don't want the white kids, to mention it. It's more of a taboo to let the baby feel, the white kids feel that it's okay to say, "That's a black man, that's a black woman, that's a black baby, a beautiful black person." Because at home behind closed doors, they having talks that might be revealed. That baby might say, "Mama, he's not a mean black man like we talked about," or such like that right there. you know. But yeah, I'm just saying we're gonna read these books when they come up and stuff, you know, and hopefully white folks, you come across this channel, you set your ass over there and shut up and at least listen to the books that are printed for you because you've read these books, no doubt. It's hundreds of these books right here that white folks wrote them themselves. Well, Ida B. Well wrote her book, but white folks wrote these books themselves so they can keep them memories within themselves and they can pass them on. And when they mention it at the family dinner or whatever, and they mention that episode, just go get the book. Go get that book, and it'll tell you what. Granddad, you remember you told us about Richard Coleman and what happened to Richard Coleman? It's in the book. They're all in the book. But I digress. Yeah, now I love y'all. Process all of this every night. After we have these readings and stuff, process it. You know, so you'll be able to deal with it and stuff. And tomorrow, you know, we'll start off with a whole clean slate. But this right here is awesome. Look at here. If our babies only knew. If they only knew, honey. But you know, that's neither here nor there. But I love y'all. I'm asleep. I'm going to give me some rest. I love you to life and afterlife. And love yourself. Have some patience with us and stuff. Hi, Leah, my sister. It's so good to see you. It is so good to see you and all of y'all. I really appreciate y'all being here. Yep, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I know I've had that happen to me too when I was growing up and stuff. You don't go over there. Do not go over there because you know what they doing and stuff. And you ain't no fighter. And you ain't watching yourself like that. Just keep your ass at home. I'm going to get that mouth and set them outside and stuff. You know, so yeah, we do that too with ours and stuff, you know. But we're going to change all that. We're going to heal our people. I'm going to look back at these comments and stuff because I did write down the book that sister told me about. And I want to write them songs down too, Hank. And, you know, because I like music and stuff. Yeah, I know. I didn't really go to white folks' communities like that and stuff. I cleaned some white folks' house when I was young. House cleaning and stuff like that, honey. They were so filthy. Them houses was and stuff. But, you know, other than that and stuff, I didn't really just spend my time and stuff around white folks when I was young, so other than school. And then, you know, as an adult and stuff, I've had a few white friends and stuff before I knew any of this. Because, honey, I promise you, our motherfucking ass wouldn't have been riding around the block. Sure wouldn't have, honey. So, you know, but you live and you learn and stuff. We all growing. We all processing this. We progressing and stuff. We in uncharted waters. This is unprecedented times. Mother Earth is waking up, activated. Cosmic energy is. White folks has been motherfucking exposed. There's a war over on the other side of the world and shit. We don't know if a meteor or a missile is coming and stuff, but we on the right track. Keep your eyes on the prize because everybody else is. Everybody else is. I love y'all, and I'll see you on the next page. I will see you on the next